Hi everyone, Adam here. Today we're going to talk about the most technical writing you'll be doing in this technical writing course, and that is writing instructions, procedures, and process explanations. Oh my. So before we go any further, this is a group assignment that you will complete together as a group, and you will only turn in one of these things. So just, FYI. So why do we have you do this? This is a big question that I get sometimes about most things. In fact, why do you make us do this, Adam? It's because you need to learn. Anyway, so later in life, or perhaps even straight out of college or at an internship, you may be in a position where you need to tell one or a group of people how to do a certain thing, or be a part of a group that determines for your organization or business how the business is going to I don't know why this is how the business is going to be doing certain things. And you get to be part of that decision-making process that then gets codified and written down, and people for generations thereafter will follow your procedures or instructions. That's exciting. And we say later in life, but really and truthfully, this has been one of the ones that I've had people come back and say, "Man, I used this right away, and that was shocking." And I say, I don't know why it was shocking. I try to give you things that are useful. This is not a shock to me. But so, for example, we had a young man 2 semesters ago that completed this class, and his mock organization that he was in was the Forest Service. Later went on to get an internship at the Forest Service. One of the things that they asked him to do was write the procedure for X. I can't remember what it was. And he was able to say, I actually did this in my writing class, and pulled out the verbatim thing that he had written in class, and now, boom, United States Forest Service policy. We're changing lives here. Anyway, all right, let's move on. So objectives for today. We want you to be able to identify first which form is appropriate for your project, right? Remember, you're only doing one of these, so come up with a project first, and then think which of these is best. And so we're fixing to work through all three of them, and you'll learn. The second thing is to understand the format of instructions, procedures, and process explanations. Fat P still applies here. Format, audience, and format, audience, topic, and presentation. Yes, there we go. So, depending on who you're writing for, what their knowledge level is, how they're going to use it, you'll choose different, like a different option here. And then finally, ultimately, just to write easily understood and complete instructions. So we're going to go through the three types rather briefly here, but just remember that there is a reading that goes with this lesson, and it will be very helpful if you read it. And it's an excerpt from a book chapter, which I bootlegged by scanning it in the copier, and it is on Scholar for your reading pleasure. So first, let's do instructions. Instructions are one of the ones that is easy for people to get their mind around, all right? And so this is just providing a set of steps that readers can follow to perform a specific action and get a specific outcome. So you think about how to drive the forklift, how to assemble furniture, insert screw A into slot B, and turn counterclockwise 3/4 and boom, couch. Or how to complete a form, all right? And so you perform each of these steps in order to get a concrete outcome, all right? This is pretty easy to get your mind around. Now suppose, for example, you need to tell somebody how to do something, but the options that they could take to get there are really, really numerous. And whenever you get there, it may end up being one of 15 outcomes. Well, if that is your question, then procedures would be the correct response for you. And so you can think of these as a higher order, more abstract set of instructions, where you just give essentially guidelines or rules of the road for how to do a thing in the best, most efficient, safest way. And you might not get the same outcome every time. You might not have step one, step two, but you are providing some instructions to people to do a thing. So there's a couple different possibilities of people that you'll write for. You could be writing for one employee, how to do the thing. An example of this would be, the procedure for taking a phone call if you work at the Forestry Service on what happens if somebody calls and says, I have a wild alligator in my yard. I don't know why I said wild alligator. There are very few tame alligators. So another one would be steps in a system to be followed by several employees, all right? And so one of the ones that I actually got to write whenever I was in 4-H is I wrote the pardon, how to like background check in 4-H. All right, and so you can see there that it's not just step 1, step 2. There's a lot of options. So when do we background check? If people are going to be exposed to children for like more than 6 times in 6 months or something, and then what if it comes back with a misdemeanor or something? There's just a lot of options there, and so we give general guidelines on how to handle that. That would also apply to the third option there, standards and rules for handling specific equipments or systems. In this case, the system would be the like background checking system. So whenever we think about who are we writing for, there's a couple options. First, you could be writing for those who must actually perform the steps, okay? People that are actually like workers. You could also be writing for their supervisors that come in, maybe don't know how to perform the steps, and they have these procedures that they can then read and say, wait, the people that I am supervising are or are not doing this correctly. And then know more about the process. And then finally, procedures really cover your butt as well. And so when we say we also write for managers, legal staff, inspectors who need to make decisions and perform their own jobs. All right. And so, for example, last year in Dallas, I think it was, we had the first person to contract Ebola in the United States. And they found that she had violated a procedure whenever she scrubbed in and out, put on her hazmat suit and whatnot. And they said, oh no, the hospital allowed this breach of protocol, and the hospital came back and said yes, but at least we had a protocol. And so what that does is it takes the some of the input or the blame off of you, because you have gone through the process as a hospital of saying this is the safest, most efficient way that we need to do this to prevent the contamination or spread of disease, and that this person just happened to not follow that instructions. Okay, so that's one of the big reasons that we do in procedures. So, all right, finally, process explanations. All right, and so this is things that are really complex. That we don't necessarily need procedures for. We just need to know how they work. And so generally intended for individuals who won't perform the action themselves but need to understand. So let me give you an example that they use in the book. One of the process explanations is, how does photosynthesis work? Or a better one, how does a breathalyzer work? Okay, and so an example of an individual that might never need to actually administer the breathalyzer would be like a lawyer. All right, so he just needs to know how it works so that he can talk about it in a courtroom setting. All right, and so the process explanation is just you describing how something actually occurs. And so this is actually kind of a good one, right? So you could think about the difference between instructions and process explanations. So like instructions for how to administer a breathalyzer might be best for the police officer. You could say, like step 1, read them their rights. Step 2, like pull out the breathalyzer. This is great. I'm making this up on the spot. Step 3, like hold their nose, and I don't, I don't know what it is. But that wouldn't be helpful for the lawyer that needs to understand the chemistry of how the breathalyzer actually works, right? So for that person, you might write more about, the compounds that are in the breathalyzer that will, register a certain color if, so on and so forth. That was super. All right. Read the book. It'll be helpful. All right. In class, we're going to give you some time to work on this. I want to show you very quickly the instructions for this assignment. Make them bigger here. All right. And so again, we used to have this kid named Matt that would, anytime there was an option, he would do all 3 because he didn't read the instructions. And so I started putting in, first off, Matt, you only need to do one of these. So you'll notice how, again, you work on this as a group. Here are the things to include. If you're doing instructions, I want to see these headings, all right, titles. So title, introductions, including purpose, audience, list of parts, list of materials, sequential steps, conclusion. Same thing for procedures. I want to see these headings. If we don't see them, you fail, so do those. Same thing with process explanations. We talk about stages in the process. All of these, like what each of these is outlined very clearly in this particular book that you're going to be reading, which is, I say it's a book, it's like 10 pages and there's pictures, so don't freak out. All right, that's it for me. Thank you very much for being a part of this lesson, learning the things with us. Let us know if you have any questions.